Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of, I'm not sure what we're going to call this here today. I guess top 10 albums, ranking the albums, whatever. This show is a tribute to the master who we lost a couple days ago, Mr. Chick Corea. So I have assembled probably the two guys that I knew had to be on this show. One of the biggest Chick Corea lovers other than myself, Mr. George Lamie, a longtime viewer of SOT, and the doctor of jazz himself, Mr. Mike Antonelli. So welcome, guys. Happy to have you both on the show. It's all about Chick Corea Day today. And, I've been pretty devastated by this loss. And sometimes I think you don't realize how much you're going to miss someone, when we're talking about our musical heroes till they're actually gone. And this guy has meant so much to me for so many years. And he's the musician that got me into jazz back in like the early 80s. So this loss, really stings. And, it came so suddenly. And like George and I have spoken about, in recent months, I mean, they were working on a new Electric Band album. So now like what happens with that, right? So I don't know, you guys want to give your thoughts real quick before we start talking albums here?
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I came in the mid '80s, and I came in with Return to Forever. A couple guys across the street from me were big fans. They showed me first that Demio live album, and then Return to Forever right from there. And uh, through the years, I never came upon anybody that I liked more than Chicks, songwriting wise. So, I mean, that's where I came in, and that's where I've always liked.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, for me too. My love for Chick Corea started when I was a senior in high school, and I wasn't into jazz at that time. I was just preparing to go to music school, but I wasn't really a jazz player by any stretch. And I was, as we talked before, my discography was mostly classic rock and so forth at that time. And I heard a couple of things that he had released in the early 70s, and it just struck me as something really interesting. And ever since then, of course, it's just the history is amazing. So for me, it all started around 1978, and it's grown exponentially since then. When I first started to discover jazz and became, allured into that realm was when I went to college in 1978, fall 1978. And Chick was a big part of my discovery of jazz at the time. So that was before all the, all the Electric albums. Yeah. In my experience, anyway. I know he did some before that, but that's really what happened with me. And over the years, I mean, just loved Chick as a composer, as a performer, as a real ambassador of jazz music and fusion, and whatever style he did, he just knocked it out of the park for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you talk about like those world famous, keyboard players, pianists, whatever, and the usual suspects generally come up. But I think most people always kind of point to Chick as, you may have a couple guys who technically might have been, better players to some ears. Herbie's comes to mind, and, there's various others. But I think when it comes to songwriting and composition, I don't think many guys touch Chick Corea in my book. There's something about the melodies he creates, his willingness to adapt like Latin themes and classical. It's like this really well-rounded kind of palette that always appealed to me, no matter what he was doing, whatever the band, whatever the duo or trio he's playing with, whatever albums he guested on. I mean, that sound was always there, from like, the acoustic grand piano to the Fender Rhodes to all the different synths he used in the 80s. I mean, just wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. So let's kick this off. So George, why don't you start off with your number 10 here?
Well, I'm pulling a Pete and doing a mulligan. I couldn't break this tie. And because another reason, which I'll explain. This one. There we go. This is part of a Japanese import box set, 5 trios it's called, 2007. I don't think it ever caught a release on its own. So for that reason, I figured no one's going to be able to check it out unless if you're a streamer. Brooklyn, Paris to Clearwater, 2007. A very early appearance of the bass phenom, Adrian Perot. The material's all over the place, a mixture of standards and chick originals. But tied, Corea, Clark, and White, Forever.
Oh, wow. Very
This
cool.
is 2010, I believe. It's a double disc. The first disc is standards and a couple of RTF tracks. And disc 2 is live in the studio with guests, John Luke Ponte, Bill Connors, and unfortunately for me, Chaka Khan on 2 tracks. Not my favorite tracks there, but and again, that's a mixture of RTF stuff, a couple of standards, and some oldies like Crescent and Armando's Roomba, stuff like that. But the production's incredible. Lenny White produced it. He's become a really, really good producer. But if you like the straight ahead stuff, highly recommend this.
Cool. I got to hear that. Nice. All right, Mike, what do you got?
Okay, so I started out with like probably George and you as well. There's just too many to pick from to really narrow it down. So to narrow my choices down, I picked my favorite albums based on one chick composition from those albums that will live in infamy in my mind. So each one of mine has. I'll tell you what the album is and what the composition is that I drew me to that album that I'll never forget. So the first recording that my number 10, I'm going to put down Touchstone from 1982. It was a recording with a large orchestra. So many big names that on that recording. Duende and Compadres, 2 songs from there that chick wrote that I will always remember from that release. One's like a really solemn ballad, very reflective, and the other one's kind of up-tempo, Latin jazz, and really like those. That's my number.
It's great. Duende is so good.
Yeah.
Padres is Return to Forever reunion track.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice. Good choices there, Mike. All right. Well, since George started us off in this fashion, I'm going to do the same thing and pull a mulligan here because I do it from time to time, right? And I only did this literally like 15 minutes before we started recording this because I actually had my top 10 and then I started thinking about another album. I'm like, oh, how the hell can I not include this one? So my tie for number 10 is going to be the Electric Band album, Eye of the Beholder from 1988. All right. I like this album a lot. Back when this album first came out, I wasn't as big on it because this album is a little more acoustic in nature. And at the time, after those first couple Electric Band albums, I was like, all right, it's a little kind of toned down. But over time, and we talked about this on the Electric Band ranking the album show, I think this album has really held up well. And I've liked it more and more as time has gone on. And that is tied with the Leprechaun from 76. Really strong chick solo album, which I think blends, his classic jazz leanings with a lot of the electric stuff and the fusion aspect of Return to Forever. A lot of great piano and synths. You got Imp's Welcome, Lenore, Reverie, and Leprechaun's Dream Part 1 and 2, and then that really kind of cool, funky Night Sprite song. I think it's a really enjoyable album, and I think one that gets overlooked a lot when people are talking about some of the classic chick albums. So those are my tie for number 10. Back to George.
All right. Number 9, 3 quartets.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Steve Gadd, Eddie Gomez, Michael Brecker blowing the doors off everything. I mean, his performance on here, if you like saxophone, you got to get this. And this is like an indictment of the vinyl era because it's just the 4 quartets on the vinyl, but then the CD has 4 bonus tracks that I don't know how anybody could have left off. They're amazing. So you like straight ahead stuff but find it a little little mellow sometimes. This is the one. It's a little darker and a little more intense. That'd be my number 9.
Cool. Very good choice. All right, Mike, back to you. Hi, Alva.
Hi, Pete.
Oh, she's in the back there,
I'm so sorry. I'm out.
crashing. So we've been photobombed, Pete.
There you go. That's all right.
So yeah, so more on 3 quartets later, George. You stole some of my thunder, but that's quite all right. I love to hear about it.
Pound ahead.
Number 9 for me, a recording from 1997, which features some of the younger cats, the younger generation, who's a prominent jazz musicians in one generation since Chick. Talking about Kenny Garrett, Joshua Redman, Christian McBride, and featuring the great Roy Haynes on drums. An album called Remembering Bud Powell from 1997, and the composition, of course, is Chick's only tune on that album that is written by him, which is called Bud Powell. Great Chick tune. If you don't know it, it's just really snappy melody and so much fun to not only to listen to but to play. It's a great tune.
I've not heard that album. I got to check that one out.
I haven't heard it in ages.
Very cool. Speaking of Roy Haynes, number 9 for me, Now He Sings, Now He Sobs from 1968. What a great album this is, huh? I mean, this is like that magical jazz trio to end all jazz trios. Chick, Miroslav Vitus, and Roy Haynes. Just one classic after another on this album. I mean, if you get it for nothing else other than the title track, Matrix, Bossa, man, Now He Beats the Drums, Now He Stops. I mean, just classic stuff on here. This is when you think of a classic piano jazz trio album, this has got to be at the top of the list, right? Or pretty damn close. That's my choice for number 9. Back to George.
All right. Number 8, Stan Getz, Captain Marvel.
Oh,
Basically a Chick album because he wrote all but one tune, which is a standard. And the lineup, Stan Getz, Stanley Clarke, Tony Williams, and Chick. Again, straight ahead stuff. Kind of sounds like the early Return to Forever stuff. A lot of Rhodes, Latin flavors. First track, La Fiesta. Everybody knows that song if you know Chick. And Captain Marvel, 500 Miles High, would go on to be recorded by Return to Forever later in the year. This was recorded in 72, but didn't come out till 75 for whatever reason. But yeah, you want to hear a good blowing album? This is it. Stan Getz, Captain Marvel.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
another one I need to own. Yep.
Absolutely.
All right, Mike, back to you.
So from 1989, another Chick trio that I was really fond of, featuring Chick and John Patitucci on the bass and Dave Weckl on the drums. This one is, where can you see it there?
There we go.
Acoustic band.
With a K.
Yeah, and my favorite tune from this recording is TBC, or Terminal Baggage Claim. Just a real, there's a lot of standards on this as well, but that's a Chick tune that I just really like the feel of, and it's got this three groove going all through it, and it builds an intensity. It's just a real fun tune to sit down and, especially for a trio, the amount of energy they generate in that tune is interesting. Let me just read you what I find amazing about Chick. Also, is when you do more research on him or you collect his albums and stuff, he always has some way of putting inspirational messages and things in his works, whether it's through his lyrics or his poetry and quotes and so forth that he adds to his records. I want to read you one here that is in the inside cover, just a little thing that he wrote in this liner notes here. Life is a wisp, and I like it. Crisp, crystal, and refreshingly to the point, instantaneously revealing all there is. Away with pretension, just see intention, and the music of life is yours. Chick Corea.
Well said, Chick.
Nice.
Yeah.
To the point.
Right, that album.
Yeah. So
And it's funny, I remember like when that album came out, I was talking about Eye of the Beholder before and how that was a little bit of a change of pace from the two electric bands that came before it. And I think that the acoustic trio album was like the extension of that. It's almost like Chick was like, oh, I want to do a little bit more of this before we dive back into the full blown electric stuff. So that acoustic trio album, totally, the acoustic band totally made sense as a continuation of Eye of the Beholder, I always thought. All right, so for my number, where are we? Number 8, right? Okay, I'm gonna go with the album that came after the acoustic band album, Inside Out. I love this album. This is, it's almost like this is the electric band's like kind of avant-garde album. And I think this goes into all sorts of wacky places that, to the casual ear probably is like so complex and out there, and it totally is. But if you appreciate really challenging music with amazing virtuosity, man, it doesn't get much better than this. And George sent me a live concert of them playing most of this back last year. That's just absolutely mind blowing. And I saw them on this tour as well. So to see these guys, or to hear these guys play this music on stage as effortlessly as they did, unbelievable stuff. I mean, Tale of Daring, Stretch It, Make a Wish. I mean, all these long suites, just monster stuff. Weckl, Patitucci, Marienthal, Gambale, and Chick Corea, like one of my favorite lineups of any band all time. And I love this album so much. That's my number 8. Back to George.
More on that later. Number 7, 5-piece band.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot about that one. Oh, that's a
So
good one.
coming off the 2008 Return to Forever reunion tour, and everybody hoped, I think, they would go in the studio. Instead, Chick takes a hard right turn, and he realizes a long-held dream to go out with John McLaughlin. And they put together this super band, Kenny Garrett on sax, Chris McBride on bass, and Vinny Colaiuta on drums. They had to leave the tour in the middle, and they got Brian Blades for a while, but it's a great album, double disc, a mix of originals and covers, but a lot of the recent McLaughlin stuff at that time. It's 2009, and I really like those albums. So for me, 5-piece band.
That is a great choice. And I'm going to have to listen to that after we get off this call, because I totally spazzed on that one. And that would have easily been in my honorable mentions if it didn't make my top 10. That's a great album. Good call. All right, Mike, back to you.
So my number 7 is an album of a live concert produced by Stanley Clarke. And this is called Echoes of an Era, Part 2. Produced by Lenny White, like I said, Joe Henderson on saxophone, Stanley Clarke acoustic bass, of course, Chick, and the great Nancy Wilson on vocals. Interesting about this album to me is one song they break down to a trio, and they play a version of 500 Miles High with just the 3 members of the Return band on there. The trio, and it's amazing. You got to hear Chick's solo when he stretches out live with this, and you talk about virtuosic playing. Holy cow, just blows my mind every time I listen to it. But that's kind of an obscure work, and 1982, so which was a very busy time period. Chick is going in so many different directions, like many of the artists that we've talked about in different shows, especially these guys who, jazz artists, that's what they did. They just made albums, and they played live all the time. Chick, right up until his passing, was on the road and playing live. Did a great 75th birthday tour with stops in New York City and all over the country, and showed no signs of slowing down, even to his last days. So.
Yeah, I mean, Mike and I were talking about that just the other day. I was sitting at his brewery with him, and we were talking about how Chick and a lot of these other guys just, man, would just crank out like a handful of albums a year, live albums, do all these different short little tours with all these different configurations, and that's just what the jazz guys do. It's not like some of these rock bands or pop bands who, go into the studio for 6, 8, 9 months and, do an album at a tour, and then you see them 5 years later or whatever. The jazz guys that's just what they did. It was part of their livelihood, constantly playing and recording music. That's what they did.
I was looking through the discography in preparation for this, and I saw he put out 6 albums in 1978 for 1 year.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to him, probably no big deal, right? No different than any other deal, any other year. Yes. All right. Where are we? My number 7. All right. So let's go. I have a real soft spot for this album because it's the first. I had already heard and listened and loved Return to Forever by the time I heard this album, but this obviously was of the time that I was living when it came out, and the first Electric Band album for me is just really special. This just, again, this was the new band for him at the time. I was freshly getting into his music, so when I heard this, I was like, I love it. I want to hear more. I love the catchy melodies of these songs. Again, it's something to be said. We talked earlier about his strong compositional skills. And I think to be able to make instrumental music that is really pleasing to the ears from a hook perspective, right? Usually you talk of hooks and melodies, and people always talk about music with lyrics and vocals, right? But to some people, if a song doesn't have vocals, it's hard for them to appreciate. But I think if you put on almost any song on this album, and all the songs are really catchy, and you don't miss the vocals, right? All the different melody lines, either from the piano or synths or the sax, or there's no sax on this album, but the guitars, it's so fun to listen to. And I mean, there's just some, Rumble is just a classic, Gotta Match, Electric City, King Cockroach. There's just so many great songs on here. And I do have to throw out some amazing guitar solos from Scott Henderson and Carlos Rios. I mean, especially from Carlos Rios, what a monster player that you almost wish he was on the entire album. And a guy who kind of never really latched on with anything. He was more of a studio guy. But I love this. And of course, there's classic Chick with that guitar, right? It's so 80s, right? But it's just so cool. So yeah, and I love the logo. I mean, how cool is that? So that's my choice for number 7.
Good one. All right. My number 6, Eye of the Beholder.
Yep.
Same as you, it sounded a lot different from those 2 albums before with all that MIDI stuff. And, I was kind of welcoming the change to hear more piano and get it a little more organic sounding. At the time, my prog rock metal self probably thought it was a little light in the loafers, but as years have gone by, just appreciate it more and more, especially Trance Dance, the title track, Eternal Child. I mean, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful album, actually. Less of the bombast of some of the other Electric Band albums. I love that aspect of their music, but this album is really different, and I think, yeah, you're right, it's really held up well over time. Back to Mike for number 6.
Okay, so number 6, yeah, 78 was really an influential year for me in so many ways, as I mentioned earlier. And this is a real eclectic and a strange pick. You will think, but many people think it's strange, but this is actually a Woody Herman album, and it's called Chick, Donald, Walter, and Woodrow. Now, the combination of who's on this is crazy in a way. You have Woody Herman's band, and Chick composed a suite called "Suite for a Hot Band," which takes up all of side 1. And then on side 2 is recordings mostly from, well, not all of them, but from Royal Scam and also from Asia, and they included FM in there from Steely Dan, all arranged by the arrangers for the Woody Herman band, which I won't go into that because it's too long. But the side one, all Chick, and that as far as I know, that's the first or the only recording that I know of that Chick actually didn't play on and composed the music for that. It's a great band. When Woody Herman was in his prime, this lineup is amazing. Of course, you have Woody Herman on a saxophone and clarinet, Frank Tiberi, Gary Anderson, and Joe Lovano on tenor saxophone, Bruce Johnstone baritone, Glenn Drews on trumpet, Dennis Dotson, Alan Vizzuti. Also, you've got the great Jeff Hamilton on drums and percussion. So, I mean, there's so many guys on here that are just young, up and coming superstars. And to have Chick compose the whole side one for your band when it's in its prime it was an amazing find for me. When I first heard this, I said, wow, that's amazing. I got to learn more about this cat, So
That's pretty cool. I have never heard of that one.
yeah, it's available on YouTube. It's some person posted it on there, so you can listen to the whole thing. And the Steely Dan tunes are great too. The arrangements of them. I mean,
how could they not be, right?
yeah. And of course, I think Asia just came out in 1978, and so did this.
Yeah.
Or 77, maybe Asia came out. This came out a year later, which it's just a really cool, interesting kind of combination. Put Chick and Fagan Becker and Woody Herman together.
Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah, why not? Who would have thunk it?
I'm gonna go check that out for sure. All right, my first of a couple stops through the Return to Forever catalog here. My number 6 is going to be No Mystery. I will say for me, the Return to Forever catalogs is so hard to rank because I have this like connection with almost all the albums, and it almost pains me that this is going to be the lowest ranking one in this list, but it does not mean I don't love it. I mean, the title track, Celebration Suite, Sophistafunk, Flight of the Newborn, Day Ride, excerpt from First Movement of Heavy Metal. I mean, this is bombastic jazz fusion at its finest, jazz rock, prog rock, funk. It's all here. Lenny White, Al Di Meola, Stanley Clarke, Chick Corea. A great lineup that produced some amazing music. So yeah, love it. Love the Latin flavors in it too. It's got a little bit of everything, and it rocks. Great stuff. Back to George.
All right, top 5. Number 5, The Vigil. 2013 solo album. Another great lineup. Adrian Farrell on bass, Charles Altura on guitar, Marcus Gilmore on drums, Roy Haynes' nephew, and Tim Garland on sax from the Origin Band. It's real old school. It's a lot of this stuff reminds me of Return to Forever, but with sax, especially the first 3 tracks, Planet Chia, Portals to Forever, Galaxy 32. Great stuff. I mean, long epics, 16-minute track. Then there's a 18-minute kind of a free jazz track with Stanley Clarke guesting on Upright. Overall, it's got to be the best album of the recent Chick stuff, I think. The only down part is there's a Chick track with Chick's wife Gail on vocals. Not my favorite singer of all time. So if you're willing to skip that track, I think you really owe it to yourself to get The Vigil. Check it out.
I have not heard that one either. I need to check that out. That sounds really good.
Me as well. Yeah. So where am I? The number 5.
Number 5.
I told you 78 was a great year. Once again from 1978.
There you go.
The album Friends, featuring one of my favorite Chick quartets. Joe Farrell, amazing, Reed and flute player. Joe Farrell's flute work is so underrated, I think. As a flautist, he just has really got a beautiful sound and a very simplistic way of handling that instrument, I think, which is really beautiful in his hands. Of course, Steve Gadd on drums and percussion, and Eddie Gomez on acoustic bass. And of course, for me, I was hooked from the title track. What a great, great piece of music. The tune Friends. It's just, I can't help it, but I feel like, you know, really happy all over it every time I just put that on. It's just such a happy song. So
That's a warm and fuzzy song for sure.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's some
Good
burners
choice.
on that album too. I think
What's that?
I said some real burners on that album too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
The second half, I think. What's the last track? Cappuccino.
Cappuccino.
Yeah, that's got a crazy Gadd solo.
Yeah. Yeah, reminiscent of what he does in Three Quartets.
Yeah.
Which was just a few years later, actually. But we'll hear about that later.
All right, my number 5. Got to have this on here, right? In a silent way. I mean, arguably the first ever jazz fusion album, arguably, right? Great lineup here. You got Miles, Herbie Hancock, and Chick, both on electric piano. Wayne Shorter, Dave Holland, Joe Zawinul, also on electric piano. Just think about that. Those 3 guys appearing on the same album together. It's crazy what was going on in the late 60s. John McLaughlin on guitar, Tony Williams on drums. Doesn't get much better than that. 2 long tracks. You know, of course, as you know, Teo Macero was doing back in those days, they would have these big, long studio sessions, and he would like kind of piece things together. But you got Shh, Peaceful. You got In a Silent Way, and It's About That Time. So it's roughly just under 40 minutes worth of some lovely music with some of the best atmospheric electric piano you'll hear anywhere. And that's, you know, due a lot to Chick working with Herbie and with Zawinul. And I just think this is a magical album. And the fact that he was a part of this is a really cool thing. So that's my number 5.
All right. My number 4, the acoustic band live at the Blue Note Tokyo.
Ooh.
This is another Jap import. I think it caught a domestic release later though, 1996. Recorded in 92. Apparently Weckl had another gig, so Vinny Colaiuta sits in on the drums. And it's just the acoustic band tearing it up, basically. All 3 men just killing it live. It's got a couple early renditions of stuff that would end up on Paint the World, like Tumba, and then a bunch of standards. Autumn Leaves, Chasing the Train. Chasing the Train's just killing on this. Humpty Dumpty, a Chick classic. So absolutely recommend this for straight ahead stuff.
Wow.
Intense.
Yeah, I think if you need someone to fill in for Weckl, I think Vinny's a pretty damn good choice, I would think.
Yeah.
For the moon and back.
Yeah, right. All right, Mike, back to you.
Okay, well, where am I? Number 4.
Number 4.
So I don't have a cover to show you, but I think everyone will be familiar with this release from 1976, featuring Steve Gadd, Jean-Luc Ponty, Stanley Clarke, and others, including Chick's wife on vocals, I think on 1 or 2 tunes. My Spanish Heart.
Yeah.
The favorite for me with that tune with that album is the tune Armando's Rumba, which has been re-recorded and redone by so many artists. You know, it's become really a jazz standard.
Yeah.
One of the Chick's compositions that just captures that whole Latin jazz side of Chick, and really great tune for me.
Yeah, great song, great album. And for those who don't know, Armando is Chick's, you know, real name, right? So
Named after his dad.
yep. Good choice. I like that one. Good album. All right. My number 4, 1973's Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy. The one and only Return to Forever album with Billy Connors on guitar. This is, you know, it's funny. You had those couple of albums that predated this one where, you know, they starting to form the Return to Forever lineup, but again, a little bit different, more acoustic in nature. You got Joe Farrell and then various other folks, more with reeds and woodwinds and what have you. And then all of a sudden they break into this, which is pretty damn rocking, pretty loud and aggressive, mostly electric instruments, electric guitar, electric bass, you know, Chick moving into other sorts of instruments besides the piano. Lenny White's great drumming, got the title track. Captain Senior Mouse is a classic track, great composition from Chick. You got Space Circus, Theme to the Mothership. I mean, just great album. I love this album so much. It's big and loud, but the melodies are there as always. And I think no matter what album we're talking about here today, Chick had a way with creating melodies that just kind of stick in your brain forever. So that's my number 4.
Oh, that's my number 3. I want to say too, if you don't know, or other people don't know, the original pressings of that, I never liked the sound of it. So when they went out in 2008 for the reunion tour, they promoted it with this compilation. And on this compilation, the entirety of Seventh Galaxy is on here. Didn't just remaster it. They remixed it from the original tapes. This guy, Mick Gozinski, did it. It's the single best remaster I've ever heard. I mean, the guy did incredible work. Lenny White should just go kiss his feet because the drums sound so much better on this thing. It also has Romantic Warrior complete for those that never caught that. So, and then a smattering from the other 2 quartet albums. But yeah, highly recommend this compilation.
Wow. Yeah, because I will agree with George. As great as this album is, as great as the songs are, this CD, and probably I didn't have the original LP, but it's very muddy sounding. Could be better. You know, you listen to this next to Romantic Warrior, immense difference. So I would love to hear that.
Yeah, check it out for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, to me, number 3 already mentioned. Now He Sings, Now He Sobs from 1968. And the tune from that LP, that recording that I really enjoy is, well, I like them all, but the one that really sticks in my mind and one I've played several times and I really like the music to study is Windows tune that Chick wrote, that it has become somewhat of a jazz standard as well.
Yeah. Such a great album.
Yeah.
All right. My number 3, I'm sure most folks knew this was coming. Again, one of those large scale ensemble albums that featured anybody who was anybody on the jazz, soon to be fusion scene in the late 60s. This would be released in 1970. Bitches Brew from Miles Davis. What an album. I mean, it's just, and how do you even describe this? It's just got like, it's haunting. There's tons of funky groove. There's a little bit of rock. There's some free jazz on here. You know, Pharaoh's Dance, the title track, Sanctuary, Miles Runs the Voodoo Down. At the core of it all, though, is those haunting, spooky electric piano, Fender Rhodes tones from Mr. Corea, alongside, you know, McLaughlin and all these other great players, and of course Miles himself. So I have loved this album for a long, long time, and still do. So that's my number 3 pick for today.
All right. My number 2, like Pete said, Inside Out.
Oh.
My favorite electric band album, easily. I mean, Tale of Daring alone. I had been waiting for them to do a long suite like Return to Forever had done, and they knocked it out of the park. Make a Wish, Stretch It. I mean, there's no skips on this album. Every song is great.
Yeah.
And yeah, the tours were great too. If you get one electric band disc, this is the one for me.
Couldn't argue that. It's funny, if you saw Frank Ambali's little kind of eulogy to Chick the day after he died, he posted on Facebook, you know, he talked about how, you know, great a friend and mentor Chick was, and he made mention of one of the greatest musical experiences of his life was being able to record and specifically play that track Tale of Daring, and he, you know, was so thankful that Chick kind of brought that to the table, and that was one of the highlights of his musical career. It says a lot, right? And that song is that good. It's that good. All right, Mike, back to you.
So we're up to number two.
Yeah.
Okay, my number two. I'm surprised nobody's mentioned this one as of yet, but unless it's going to be somebody's favorite, but Light as a Feather. Just an amazing LP for me. I fell in love with Spain. I'm still in love with Spain. That is just a crazy, crazy, beautiful song featuring great flute work and piano work, and one of my favorites of all time. Great composition.
Yeah, that album was so atmospheric too. Some really lovely stuff on there. Well, speaking of Return to Forever, how about a little Romantic Warrior action? The album that got me into Return to Forever, and it's still pretty fresh sounding to this day. And great production, great songwriting, and here you got the whole band kind of helping out with the songwriting, which I think is really good. I think they were all really clicking at this point. Ironically enough, right after this, they would break up, right? Go figure. But Medieval Orchard, Sorceress, The Romantic Warrior, The Magician, Duel, The Jester, and the Tyrants, just some amazing stuff on here. Great mix of those kind of Latin rhythms with little bits of classical, little bits of rock, and certainly lots of freeform jazz. And it's all so melodic. Amazing, amazing solos from everybody here. And a great album cover too. This is if you're going to get, if you're new to jazz fusion and I was to recommend 5 albums to start with, this is one of them, without a doubt, as is this one that's on my t-shirt that I'm wearing right here. And probably this one right here as well. So there you have it. That's my number 2.
My number 1.
There you go.
This is the 99 remaster. Again, I recommend it. It's not as stark as Seventh Galaxy in improvement, but it is a noticeable improvement. I even prefer this to the version that's in that anthology that I had out. But yeah, I still remember the first night I heard this. My buddy Colin played this at a lake party, and I just couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it to this day. Probably my favorite album overall. So
it's a great one. It's just mind-blowingly good.
Great choice, yeah. All right, we're down to my number 1.
Yep.
So of course it was already mentioned, and for various reasons, not the least of which it features some of my favorite musicians of all time, including the late great Michael Brecker, Eddie Gomez, Steve Gadd, 3 quartets. And the original LP only had the quartets on it. My favorite here, chick composition, is Part 2, which is dedicated, quartet number 2, Part 2, which is dedicated to John Coltrane. And of course, it's a minor blues, which those of you who have studied Coltrane or listened to a lot of Coltrane know that was one of Coltrane's favorite vehicles for his compositions and his improvisations. He really loved playing in the minor blues format, and in using, even his modal playing is based a lot on the minor modes and minor pentatonics. So I really enjoyed that. The Coltrane and Brecker and Gadd, everyone, even Eddie Gomez, tear this thing up. As George mentioned, there are some bonus tracks on here. And Chick explains in the this was released, this one in 1992 as a reissue. The original 3 quartets was on LP was released in 1981. Chick explains here that the tracks on this one, the reissue, were added and not anything related to the 3 quartets. After they recorded that, they had extra studio time, so they just picked some random songs and decided to play them, and that's where you get these extra tunes, including folk song Harry Canary, Slippery When Wet, and my favorite of the bonus tracks is a duet between Chick Corea and Michael Brecker to finish this CD, and it's called Confirmation, the Charlie Parker tune. And what I love about it is that Chick is playing drums, not piano. Just amazing. And he tears it up on the drum set.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing, right? So that's just a little oddity. I love those little strange things that artists put together and just kind of blow your mind after, this was going on after they made this monumentous recording. Then they threw in some other things in the studio just to try out some new songs and have some good fun. And yeah, spontaneity
And magic.
at its finest.
Yep,
right?
exactly.
At its finest.
Yep.
So.
All right. My last pick. I know some people always are a little surprised that I picked this one over Romantic Warrior, and it's very close. But Where Have I Known You Before is my favorite Return to Forever album, and my favorite Chick Corea album in general. It maybe start to finish might not have the majesty of this album, but there's just some incredible ensemble playing on here, and just absolutely the melodies, and there's like a savage nature to this album, which I think really, really appeals to me. Kind of like the Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy album does. And again, it's Corea, Demiola, Clark, and White once again, but you got Vulcan Worlds, which is that great Stanley Clark composition. You've got The Shadow of Low, a Lenny White composition. You've got the Beyond the Seventh Galaxy, which Chick wrote. You got Earth Juice, and of course, probably the song that elevates this entire album for me, which is Chick's wonderful Song to the Pharaoh Kings, which is an absolute monster track. And I love the energy of this album. I love the melodies, and it has some great Chick electric piano and various other keyboards, and I think I love the production of this album as well. So that's my number one. But you ask me if we do this again in a month, my order and maybe some of my picks might change a little bit, because there's like so much to choose from, and I love so much of it. You guys mentioned some great ones that I didn't, which I'm gonna have to go back and revisit once again as well. So anybody got any honorable mentions they want to throw out there of what has not been mentioned today?
Yeah, that would be one of mine. Where Have I Known You Before would be right at the top. No Mystery as well. Electric Band, Beneath the Mask, To the Stars, Paint the World. Couple that Mike mentioned, Friends and Touchstone, definitely. Yeah, that's off the top of my head. That would be mine.
Cool. Mike, you got any you want to throw out there?
Well, I'd just like to point out that a lot of the music that I've listened to from Chick has been things that have been recorded and posted on YouTube with his live recordings. I love to watch the performers live, especially with YouTube channel now doing such a great job presenting all these live concerts. So nothing in particular per se, a certain concert, a certain recording, but just a lot of his live work. And like I mentioned, even up until a few years ago when he did his 75th birthday tour and was all over the country, a lot of that stuff is captured live. And I would recommend, if you don't have a huge Chick collection, start with some of the things he did live, even with Christian McBride and the later things that he did with some of the new generation, or what has, they're not new yet, but the second generation, I would say,
Yeah.
that he played with. It's just he played with so many wonderful people, and he's got he was just a brilliant, amazing light that brought so much joy to so many people through his performances. So I really enjoyed the live recordings as well.
Yeah, and as someone who's seen him many times live and watched a lot of his live performances on the internet, one of the things I always liked about him is not only was he always engaging with the audience, but I love the way he engaged with his bandmates or whoever he was playing with. You ever notice you watch any Chick Corea performance, or even when you see him live, he is always paying very close attention to what everybody else in the band is doing, watching them, making eye contact with them. You don't see a lot of musicians do that. Sometimes, they're doing their thing, whatever. Chick is always watching and nodding and making that eye contact with his bandmates. And you can genuinely see that he and the rest of the band were having a lot of fun. And that kind of kinship. I mean, Mike, that kinship among musicians, which you can't replace, right?
Basically, it's a whole compositional thing that, improvisation is live composition basically, and the communication part of it is what makes it so intriguing and which brings out the spirit of all these players. That is the epitome of what Chick was about, the original voice helping everybody he played with to sound elevate better, make him sound better, and he made them sound better as well. I mean, that's the essence of what this music is all about.
Yeah.
That's why you can't replace the experience of seeing it live. Like you said, you see all the facial gestures and the communication. You get a deeper understanding of how this music is made and why it's so personal to so many people.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't remember who it was, but one of the guys that eulogized him on Facebook, someone that he used to play with, was mentioning about how he comps chords underneath other guys soloing. I always thought that was one of his biggest strengths.
Absolutely.
Chords and little runs, and just so supportive when somebody else solos.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A very special guy that's going to be missed. Yeah. As for my honorable mentions, I'm going to throw out the Mad Hatter from '78. Another solo album of his that I like quite a bit. Mike mentioned My Spanish Heart. How about the Return to Forever album, right? This album that kind of started it all. Another really nice album, Light as a Feather. Music Magic, which was the album that they put out after Romantic Warrior, which another one of those albums I maybe didn't dig as much back in the day. I've learned to really dig quite a bit. And George mentioned Beneath the Mask from the Electric Band, but a lot of really good ones. There's so many. A lot of the piano duo albums too are really, really good that we really didn't even get into today. So much to love. An enormous catalog. I mean, really enormous catalog. I was amazed at how many of his albums I've never even heard. That's just how much there is of it, right? So
I just would like to, one thing I forgot to mention is also his, you mentioned duets, his work with Gary Burton.
yeah.
There's so much material there to listen to, and the communication between those two is just amazing. They're like brothers, the way they complement each other.
Yeah.
The vibist, Gary Burton.
Yeah, those are epic albums. Totally amazing. Cool. Well, there you have it, everybody. Some love for Chick Corea. That's what today is all about here, and some of our favorite albums. Curious to see which ones everybody who's watching, which are your favorites. So feel free to list them in the comments below. I'm sure George and Mike and myself will be checking them out to see what other love we have for Chick Corea amongst our viewers. So any last words, guys?
Well, stay warm, stay safe, and keep on listening.
Go out and listen to some Chick.
There you go. And lots of it. There's plenty to choose from.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube.
All the damn time.
Thank you, George. Mike was a little late with that today, but that's okay. So stay tuned, guys. We got more stuff coming up over the next couple days. Lots of programming, so don't miss any of it. And of course, we'll see you tomorrow night live with the Hudson Valley Squares at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a real fun show, taking all your questions and comments and things like that. So for Mike Antonelli and George Lamie, I am Pete Pardo. Have a great rest of the weekend, everybody. And happy Valentine's Day to all of our significant others. Bye-bye.